In this video, we're going to talk about proving trig identities, which is a new objective in section 2 of chapter 5. Previously, in section 1, we worked with two objectives. We worked with solving trig equations. So we had an equation and we had to solve it. So we had to get to a solution, which is x values, which are angles in radian. And we worked with simplifying trig expressions. So we had an expression and we had to simplify it. We didn't have an equation. Today, we do have the equal sign that represents an equation, but we are not solving. So we are not going to get to a step where we get, for example, x equals pi over 4 or x equals a 3 pi over 2, which are solutions. We are not looking for that. Then what are we doing? We're going to start with example 1, which is simple. And here are the common steps that we're going to do. So first of all, what you're going to do, you're going to take one side of the equation. So I'm going to label them as side 1 as side 2. You're going to take side 1. You're going to manipulate side 1. How do you manipulate side 1? You're going to use two things. You're going to use the trig identities and you're going to use your algebra skills. And this is going to be very important. And when I say algebra skills, we're talking about making a common denominator, adding fractions, factoring, distributing, and so many other things. Now, each example is going to give you a different set of algebra skills that you need to use. You got to keep that in mind. Now, we're going to start with example 1. And we see we have a cotan. So I'm going to use my identities and I'm going to write cotan as cosine over sine. And I'm going to write tangent as sine over cosine. I see that I am adding fractions. So it's time to use my algebra skills. Adding fractions, I need a common denominator. So I'm going to change the color and I'm going to show you how we're going to make a common denominator by multiplying the first fraction by the second denominator. So I'll multiply the first by cosine, multiply the top and the bottom. And I'm going to multiply the second one by the first, which is sine. That way I got a common denominator. So I'll write those two fractions as 1. The common denominator is sine times cosine. It doesn't matter the order because it's a multiplication. So this is where my algebra skills come handy. The numerator, cosine times cosine is cosine squared plus sine times sine is sine squared. Now, how does that help? We have an identity at this point, and this is identity 9 that I will be using, which is going to give me 1. So now I have 1 over sine times cosine. And again, this is identity 9 if you want to write it down. And I need side 2 to have a secant and a cosecant. I don't have this yet. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my algebra skills that will allow me to split the fraction. And this fraction will be split. My algebra skills tell me that if I have 1 over 4 times 2, I am allowed to split the fraction as a fourth and a half. So 1 over sine times cosine, I'm allowed to split it into 1 over sine times 1 over cosine. After I use and manipulated side 1, I'll stop when side 2 shows up. And I have proved the identity. So this was example 1. In a separate video, I will show you example 2. If you want to practice more, it's on page 418. You can work on number 11.